Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Insurance Times webinar on digital broking, the next wave, research-based insight into broker trends in association with Applied Systems. And I'm very pleased that we here today have on the panel Helen Bryant, Director of Digital Trading at Allianz. We have Dave Chapman, Chief Revenue Officer of Applied Systems Europe. We have Wayne Jefferson, Head of eTrading at Applied Systems Europe. And we also have Ashwin Mistry, Executive Chairman of BHIB Insurance Brokers. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you for everyone who's tuning in to watch today's webinar. So just a brief description of the topics that we're going to be covering today. So here at Insurance Times, we undertake a great deal of research into broker attitudes, into the digital trends of the UK general insurance market. We conduct surveys in e-trading, in commercial lines, in personal lines. And recently, we've also conducted a digital transformation report, which was in association with Applied Systems. And this work really gives us that unique insight into how the application of digital technology is transforming firms and issues and looking at the issues that is holding back adoption of IT systems, as well as identifying some of the priorities for brokers in the years ahead. So I just wanted to start off with just a general question, Wayne or Jeff or Helen, if you would like to start, just wanted to just a general question on how do you guys feel that IT systems and broker systems have generally coped with the challenges over the last couple of years. And as you know, there's been so many challenges, for brokers, for insurance, for the whole world. So how do you feel systems, the broker systems have really coped with the challenges that the pandemic has thrown towards all of us?
Okay, I'll start that one off if that's okay. I think we're reasonably well positioned in terms of, the fact that the sector that we work in, I guess, e-trade and digital trading, is that obviously no one saw what was coming. No one had any idea what was coming. And we don't certainly want to go through that process again. But I think we've been quite able to adapt our processes a little bit easier than probably some other industries or even some other sectors of insurance trading, in that we're kind of attuned to brokers wanting to trade with us quickly and efficiently. Having the right processes and insurer products in place to enable that to kind of happen. So I think we've been able to deal with it reasonably well. I'm not saying it's been perfect. There's clearly things that we could all have done better, but we've certainly been, I think, okay through it. Okay,
thank you, Wayne. And Helen, what's your kind of perspective of the last kind of couple of years, and how do you feel IT systems, broker management systems, and the general kind of infrastructure that has been in place? Of course, there's been so much development over the last 10, 15 years. And, what's your perspective on how everything has coped with the challenges that the whole market, the whole world has faced?
Yeah, so probably similar to Dwayne, actually. I think we've coped remarkably well as an industry, and the kind of infrastructure that we've got behind has obviously supported that. I think we can often be quite hard on ourselves as an industry sometimes about, thinking perhaps we're not the most innovative or, compared to some of the kind of big, tech giants that are out there yet. Certainly from my perspective and the brokers we deal with, the response, to a sudden and unexpected lockdown and everybody working from home was actually relatively smooth. Yes, there were some bumps in the road, and certainly I think with the focus on kind of cloud technologies, etc., people were very quickly able to get teams up and running, from the home locations very quickly, and able to continue offering a great service to customers. And it's something I think we should actually be proud of in the industry. And I think sometimes we beat ourselves up about some of that. But from an insurer perspective, looking in, I think it created challenges because actually we have a lot of interconnectivity. So I look at kind of how Allianz was working pre-COVID, and actually we had a lot of integration built around recognition of broker telephone systems, etc., that really helps us do kind of innovative routing of calls. We lost that when people went home, but you adapt, and I think as an industry we were very quickly able to adapt to continue to deliver a good service. So all in all, I think we had a strong infrastructure behind us, and we were able to move pretty nimbly actually to get ourselves working and continuing offering us the service that we needed to.
Okay, thank you, Helen. And I would like to know your perspective, Ashwin, coming from BHIB Insurance Brokers. What's your perspective on the last couple of years, and how do you feel IT systems, broker management systems, have really been able to cope with the challenges for yourself and your organization and general brokers in the market?
Yeah, I've got to be honest, Southern. First of all, it challenged our disaster recovery plan. It was interesting, just before the first lockdown, the board sat down and went through the disaster recovery plan, but we hadn't quite planned a pandemic. So maybe our guys have learned something. I think we all accept there was a massive shortage of tablets and home computing technology that was not available to some of the smaller sized companies, and we were paying over the odds just to make sure that our staff were adequately resourced. But I think the biggest challenge, if you just leave aside the technology, was making sure that people had adequate space in their home, because we all take for granted we've got 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses. We have a study, we have a workstation, and we don't have 2.3 children running around because they're at home as well, scrambling for the laptop you've got. So I think the reality check for us was there was a lack of equipment. There was a lack of space for some of the guys that were working from home. There was a lack of understanding of what we as employers had to do to equip basically all our staff. But of course, it brought on a massive challenge as to how you're going to deal with customers. For those of you who still know, I look after commercial customers, and it's been a very difficult challenge over the period trying to conduct a renewal review, let alone a renewal, when your documentation is running into 200 pages. I don't know how long the attention span is of individuals. So I think that was interesting. But the biggest one, Southern, is what benchmark do we have to compare and respond to your question, because we've never had something like this. So maybe if it happens again, then we'll have something to benchmark against as to whether the software houses and broker management systems have coped better, worse, or indifferent. So I think lots of challenges. We've all had to adapt very, very quickly. Insurers have done exceptionally well, I've got to say. But remember, they're dealing with a myriad of intermediaries, from the 1- and 2-man outlet to the nationals. So not one size fits all. But of course, we've all been, unfortunately, I suppose, driven by circumstance rather than choice.
Thank you. Very interesting, and we'll definitely dive a little bit deeper into some of the issues that you've raised up there and understand a little bit more about that. And last but not least, Dave, I wanted to know your perspective. And as you know, so many challenges have been faced. I just from my perspective, seeing the research kind of develop each year, I was able to see, okay, even before the pandemic hit, it looked like as if every broker or every brokerage were at different stages in terms of how familiar they were with coping with the challenges that were coming. Of course, no one knew the huge challenges that were going to be coming their way. How do you feel the broker systems have coped with the challenges, and what's your perspective?
I think very much, I'd echo what the guys have already said. I think the reality is that it brought into sharp focus the reliance upon IT providers, whether that's in the broker space or insurance space, to provide a cloud-based system and the ability for people to access that solution from multiple different homes up and down the country and different workstations, as Ashwin said. I think that it also perhaps brings into kind of sharp focus really what does, and we'll touch on some of the topics, but what does, how do you want to service and support your clients moving forward? So to Ashwin's point, there's not one size fits all. So there's still very much in the broker space the requirement to sit down with clients and review a 200-page renewal document. But there's also then the other side of that is that some of those interactions do need to be more on a self-serve type basis. So I think what it's absolutely done is accelerated brokers' appetites to become digital, if that's the right phrase to use. So, and digital really for me will be very different for a business such as Ashwin's versus a 1 or 2 person outlet and on a high street in your local town. So I think really what it has done is firstly it's demonstrated how resilient we are as an industry, because I think to Helen's point, actually everybody coped very well, and whilst certainly in the short term I'm sure there were service challenges for lots of businesses, we all became used to the fact we were working remotely. But I think ultimately you only have to look at some of the press articles today and some brokers who are going to 4-day weeks or have invested in technology to allow them to cater for the new world we find ourselves in. So I think to perhaps echo Helen's point in the main is that resilience is probably the one thing that jumps out at me.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And yeah, really some really interesting points were raised up there that we can go into a little bit more detail further in the discussion. I wanted to move on to the first kind of topic of the webinar, which is all about kind of the focus and the switching of focus. So my question to you, Ashwin, I will begin with yourself. So as the focus switches from using digital to reduce costs and drive efficiency to now kind of more focus going towards improving client marketing and communication, where do you feel investment should go?
Okay, so just to start off at 10, first of all, let's just start off with a very simple premise. Brokers are businesses first and foremost. So yes, we are professional in everything we do, but ultimately we are businesses. And one of my passions over the last 20 odd years is looking at brokers and how they behave, and also try to get a deeper understanding of how they run their business. It's now an established fact, depending on the size of your broker and depending on your mix, anywhere between 65 and 85% of your profit and loss, your expense threshold is staff. We know insurers are looking for ways to perhaps mitigate their expense threshold through commissions, head office expenses, and effectively brokers are, as I say, businesses. They've got to look at how they're going to drive a better result for the bottom line, which means either increasing revenue through extra sales or pushing insurers for extra revenue commissions, and or reducing expenditure. So I think if you start off with the premise, they're all businesses. Secondly, I think it brought home very much the need for every business to understand their customers, understand their markets, and understand their staff capability. Because we've sort of operated in an environment where you could have face-to-face meetings, and we now require a different skill set, and I think that's something we can perhaps have to look at. I think we also need to do a bit more work on mega trends that are coming. I mean, things are happening at such a pace, whether it's crypto, driverless cars, and it just goes on and on and on. So I think we need to look at that. And then you've got to understand that cash is king. We know what's currently going on in the environments with increased costs, which is coming from all sorts, and Rishi will be looking into your wallet at some point, asking for a greater share. April with the national insurance increase, the energy costs, supply chain costs, Brexit. I think it's brought an entirely different perspective as to how you should run your business. And in one sense, it's going to weed out some of the smaller, inefficient businesses. It's going to challenge some of the larger expense-based businesses as to how they're operating, because ultimately, if you don't have a decent, healthy bottom line, you're not going to be attracting investors. And last but not least, I think in your communication earlier, I think the relation between customers and brokers has never been stronger, and I think the opportunity to share knowledge has never been better. And I think if you can share knowledge with your customers who are prepared to read and understand, that relationship will take on another new meaning into the 21st century. So I think there's an awful lot of opportunity rather than looking back. But I think it has to start with understanding your business, understanding your markets, understanding your staff, and where this is all going.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ashwin. Dave, I wanted to put the same question to you, but I wanted to draw upon some research that we conducted. So we're currently conducting the 2022 eTrading survey. So the latest kind of statistics are not out from that survey yet, but we asked this question last year in the same survey. So of course, challenges were still there for the market. Of course, circumstances have now progressed, and things are more opening up, and focuses have maybe shifted slightly. The question that we put towards brokers, was what outcome, has, if any, has your broker management system delivered to your brokerage so far? And the top three answers, so the highest answer was improved efficiency. 72% of brokers felt that improved efficiency was a key delivery. But then also they felt that streamlined and automating business processes, 56% of brokers felt that was a key outcome. And then the third one was improved employee productivity. So just putting that question back to yourself in terms of now, from when the survey was conducted last year, now 12 months on, where do you feel the focus is switching? Do you feel that clients are switching towards more client marketing and communication, or do you feel that the focus will really remain on some of those key aspects that I just mentioned there?
I think we're going to find that actually some of those themes will continue to play out. As Ashwin has said, that costs in the market are being driven quite hard, and therefore ensuring that your staff are as efficient and effective as possible has always got to be one of the key factors. And clearly from a broker management system perspective, it's going to be one of the key drivers. Automating routine tasks, ensuring that duplication is taken out of every process is something that's really quite fundamental in what we do as software providers. I think that what we will also see is that not only is the world changed within insurance, we're seeing that the world has changed for all of us in our everyday life, irrespective of what we're purchasing. And so our buying behavior and our buying habits have changed. So I'm just waiting for the moment that my dog starts going daft because the Amazon delivery driver turns up. So we're all able to purchase something at the click of a button, or interact with our retailer of choice, whether that's over the telephone, walking into the high street store, or via an app. And so I think certainly what I would expect to see is that more and more requirement from certainly the broker market and within the insurer market for online portals and self-servicing, and that will mean something very different depending on the types of business that you are. So going back to Ashwin's point earlier, there'll be certain commercial clients that would never want to deal with you online. They'd expect to see the expert sat in front of them giving the best service and advice. But there will be certain areas of our market and certain types of business that will need the frequency and just the ease of interaction via a portal or via a mobile app. So I would certainly say that there'll be a focus on self-service and talking to your clients in the most appropriate way possible. But I guess also, how can we utilize social media and digital marketing to promote businesses, and how can we segment that into our everyday journey with our clients, just to ensure that we gain the best level of retention, but we'll also attract new clients at the same time.
Okay, no, thank you so much. And so really interesting points raised up there. Helen, I wanted to put that question to you as well, and just wanted to draw on some research that we conducted in terms of eTrading. So what we were doing was looking at the why brokers, what are their reasons for using insurer extranets, and the top three answers that were given were ease of use. So 48% of brokers felt ease of use was why they used an insurer extranet. Also, a very high percentage of brokers felt that the insurer encourages the broker to use their insurer extranet. And then the third reason for why they used that particular route of trading was a better price than a software house. So putting that question back to you in taking into account what I've just discussed, where do you feel the focus should go, and where should the investment go in the years ahead?
It's an interesting one. From looking at broker management systems, I mean, firstly, I'd probably follow up on exactly kind of, I suppose, what Ashwin and Dave have said around. I don't think all the efficiencies have been found from those systems yet, and I think there is much more that can be done in that space. But I would, from my perspective, think that one of the biggest opportunities that sits there is data and use of data, and how, you know, having the platforms in the way that we do provides access to data analytics in a way that we historically wouldn't have been able to use. And I think that's really powerful for us in a way that we can actually think about how we can deliver customer value in different ways. So, you know, just for example, something that's quite close to my heart, you know, we're very concerned at the minute about underinsurance for customers. Obviously, a huge amount of customers reduced their covers during lockdown to reflect their trading. Lots of those customers have not increased their covers now that the economy is recovering very quickly. You know, using the data that brokers hold to identify those customers who made changes of that nature, actively communicating and targeted bespoke communication in that way could be a way that brokers can add real value to end customers. And I think even when we're moving into a more digital space and that we might see more online solutions, I think these are ways that brokers can stay very relevant and still add huge amounts of value. You brought the extranet piece into that specifically, and I think it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? And I understand, you know, some of the challenges and questions that sit around that. From a focus and investment piece, I think, you know, where we see that extranets will continue to have a place in the future, and I think the research certainly shows that they will. What it does allow from a kind of investment perspective is, you know, greater focus on usability. It allows propositions and use to be more targeted and more relevant. And I think that's something that kind of remains attractive. I mean, you start looking what that future might mean from a broker interaction in that space. And I guess you could be looking into the kind of API connectivity. Is that a way that actually, you know, people could be using those in a more efficient way across insurers and brokers, but something yet that I think the market still needs to move on.
Thank you very much, Helen. Just kind of, Wayne, wanted to get your perspective on where the focus, you know, should go, kind of in the years ahead. You know, of course, there's, you know, many people in the situation where they're, you know, deciding on what the strategic goals are for the next kind of 2 years, looking at some of the challenges that Ashwin touched upon in the general market, in the wider market as well. In terms of focus, in terms of your perspective, so just to draw upon some research that we conducted, we asked the question, you know, to brokers, you know, if they're using a software house, you know, what were their reasons for using that particular route of trading? And some of the top answers that were put forward by brokers was the ability to consistently compare, only needing to key risk data in once, the ability to produce their own documents on their system, and the ease of market search. So just putting that kind of question to you, taking into account the research I just discussed, where do you feel the focus should go for the next few years, and what are you seeing with your conversations with partners across the country?
Yeah, I think, again, touching on some of the points that the other guys have made, I think where we can do a bit more is working closer with the brokers that do use software houses, certainly ours, and this is something that we're trying to do more and more of, is so that they really do experience those benefits that are there in a far more clear and concise way. I think brokers know about some of these tools, but we need to probably just work with them a little bit more, and with the insurers too, in kind of jointly promoting some of the advantages of using those processes. And that's where I think we need to get closer to some customers, some insurers, and work as a group, really, to really experience those. So we talked about compares there. You know, some brokers know all about that functionality and use it day to day. brokers that, and I did read some of the notes from the surveys that have probably focused more on extranets and things like that, and they've picked out some points that they probably just weren't aware of some of the features that a software house solution can provide in terms of that comparison of cover and alleviating some of the concerns that were raised as part of the survey. And I think that's something where we can all work together really and promote those tools and use them better.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wayne. Yeah, no, it's really interesting that you said that, because when kind of analyzing last year's eTrading survey, it was really evident that every kind of broker were at different stages in terms of their training, and in many cases, when certain questions were put forward to them in terms of, for example, client management tools, it did really come across that not all brokers, but some brokers weren't as familiar in how to get the best out of these tools. And I think what basically happened was, so everything happened so kind of fast, in a sense where you had to kind of respond to lots of challenges that were occurring in the market, that they felt, okay, it's maybe a bit too late to learn how to utilize these tools effectively to the best way they can use it. So kind of going forward, it will be really interesting, especially in this year's kind of eTrading survey, which is now open, that to see how far brokers have come in terms of their familiarity with their systems and getting the best out of that system as well. So thank you very much, guys, for addressing some of those areas. And we have quite a few questions coming in from people who are joining us today. So I'll definitely touch upon those questions later on in the webinar. But just moving on to the second area that what we were keen to kind of discuss today. And it was all about kind of overcoming some of those issues that have been faced over the last 12 months. So before I get into the question, and Helen, maybe we'll begin with you, with yourself. So what we found in the 2021 eTrading survey, we found that 44% of brokers had to wait a day or more on average for their eTrading referral to be cleared. So this was definitely one of the issues that was raised over the last 12 months. And as the complexity of the product rose as well, the more issues arose when in the delays that were happening. So my question to you is, how can broker management systems help overcome the referral delays that have increased during the last 12 months of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I know there have been a number of service challenges across the industry over the pandemic, created by new and different ways of working. And obviously, I can really only go on my kind of insurer experience in terms of answer this with an Allianz. And actually, we've taken a really strong focus on reducing referrals overall, so that actually the system automates the response in as many ways as possible, which ultimately therefore means less delays because you've got more people available to work on the business. But that doesn't really help from a broker management side. So, thinking about some of the things that, with the lens I have that create delays or create challenges, one of it is the sheer proliferation of referrals that are generated that actually are unnecessary. And I don't just mean because actually it could have been automated. I mean because people are only doing it to get a sense of, what might happen if a customer makes this change. So, for example, as an insurer, we will see a volume of referrals that effectively are generated because somebody makes a change in a system midterm, but then doesn't actually ever want to follow up on it, but it sits there as something that's live And even if it's only to find out that nothing needs to be done with it, it still generates activity on an insurer perspective. I do think there's an opportunity for some smarter ways of working in broker management systems, which might be about the capability for, a broker to actually flag that they don't need that referral anymore. It was something they were looking at as part of their conversations with, and actually kind of clear it down in some way. And I think some innovative but probably fairly quick win changes that could be made along those lines would actually mean, therefore, that you're less, I suppose, wasted effort is going through from an insurer perspective, and then they can then focus their attentions on the referrals where the conversation with the insurer really is required, and it's where it's going to add value. And I think if we kind of put our collective heads together, that's something we could probably come up with. I think what you can see is when people focus on very specific issues, you can come up with some really good quick wins. And I think we're sometimes a bit too, probably focusing on other things and actually just letting this problem persist. So that's really kind of one of the most kind of obvious ones that I would call out. The other is probably, it's not so much a broker management system piece, but I guess it's also the ways of working. And I think there's a cultural piece that sits alongside systems that we need to be aware of. And again, I apologize because this is with my insurer lens, but when you're looking at how we utilize and deploy resources, so I'm sure, Allianz, and I'm sure all insurers want to clear referrals as quickly as they possibly can to get the best kind of experience. We receive a huge amount of traffic for things that actually could just be done on a system self-serve. And actually, if we could get people to embrace using systems to their full capability, then actually you might take away quite a lot of probably what I'd call noise, non-value add activity, which again would allow insurers to focus the resource on referrals that really add value as well. So I think there's a cultural piece for me there, as well as changes to an actual system.
Yeah, no, really, really interesting and really good to get your perspective. I wanted to put that same question to yourself, Wayne. How can broker management systems help overcome the referral delays that have been, increasing? And, as I touched upon, in terms of the more complex a product is, the more likely a referral could occur, the delays that happen, what aspects, how can, broker management systems overcome these delays? And is there anything that you could tell us in terms of the work that's happening in the kind of years ahead that you feel can really reduce the waiting times?
Yeah, I think Helen picked up on some great points there, actually, and I know this is something that Allianz have been doing a lot of work on. Is that initial just stop the referral if there's no point of it, and try and look at ways. If it's a decline, it's a decline. Irrespective, there's no point making a refer if you're not actually going to be interested in quoting it. So I think that's one thing, stopping it at source. Then I think there are some tools that absolutely we've got some in place in terms of live chat, and using that live chat facility is a real great way to kind of manage refers. I think the real strength of those is that kind of audit trail as well, so that you've had that discussion with the insurer, you've got the audit trail, the insurer's got the audit trail. It just stops any needless discussions later on, or any problems that might occur in the event of a claim, etc., etc. So I think that's a great tool that can be used and can be used more. We definitely need to utilize that one more. And then I think the other one is just making sure that things like, as Helen said, making sure it's a genuine refer, and the broker's not just asking the question, just what if, it needs to be we really need to know this for our customer. Let's make sure that that's looked at, rather than some of those irrespective, I wonder if I add a Porsche to this mini fleet, is that going to make a difference if he keeps that at renewal, and things like that. Those are the sort of questions that we need to try and find a better way of channeling, so they don't actually go and take up that insurer's time, because and we've all got time challenges. The broker doesn't want to do it either. So there clearly are some things that we need to work on there. I think that flag option is a good solution. I think, as Helen said, it's a great way for us to collectively get together with some brokers. We've got some ideas about how we can manage things better too, and with the insurers, and try and put some of these processes into practice.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Wayne. And yeah, no, it really is all about collaboration and sharing ideas and really helping, because every broker, many brokers are in different circumstances, different situations. So you as Ashwin said before, one size fits all approach just doesn't work in this kind of day and age. It may do for certain types of products that may be a bit more simple, but yeah, more solutions are definitely needed. And each year when we conduct the eTrading survey, we have many kind of suggestions from brokers, but I think as products develop and get more complex, they really want to definitely have more collaboration with their partners on how they can speed up that process going forward within that product line. So I wanted to put that question to you, Ashwin, as well, coming from a slightly different perspective. Referral delays is a huge topic of frustration for brokers in the market. When we ask the question to brokers on not how long they're currently waiting, but we ask them, how long are they willing to wait before, how long are they willing to wait for an insurer to clear a referral before approaching another insurer? And expectations, this really looks at kind of the expectations. And, we found that 38% of brokers were willing to, wait a day or two for their referral to be cleared. Now, what do you feel about those kind of expectations? And do you feel that in the years ahead, if more solutions are implemented, you'll see expectations rise even more?
Okay, so I think I'm going to answer this question in two parallel chains. First of all, customer expectations have never been higher. Everybody expects an instant, immediate response, and I think if they don't get the response in the time frame they're prepared to tolerate, they will have an alternative to go to, or they'll find an alternative choice. And I think in many ways, whether it's in insurance or any other interaction that you and I now have with any supplier, we've become very demanding customers. And because we now have choice, because of technology, I don't think household names can sit on their laurels and expect business to walk through their door, which includes insurers. And in many ways, unless we adapt to the sort of changing customer journey, I think, Houston, we all have a problem. So that's one aspect which we can debate a bit more if you want. But I think for me, Southern, the world changed when Boris and Rishi stood up at the 5 o'clock briefing post the first pandemic crisis, and they met with the ABI and announced on that infamous Tuesday, we've spoken to the ABI, all BI claims are going to be covered, denial of access, please make a claim. And then Wednesday morning, BBC headline, you're all covered for COVID BI claims. The world changed for the brokers because all of a sudden, some of the lazy brokers, suddenly started to read the policy wordings that they were distributing, because not all wordings were the same, even provided by the same carrier. So in many ways, COVID just woke up the sleeping giant. Brokers had to start reading their policy wordings, had to understand the interpretation of BI claims, and in many ways, that triggered a volume of activity which extended to business travel, which extended to supply chain, which, with import export. So a whole range of questions were coming thick and fast. And of course, the broker is only going to be able to speak to the one underwriter he or she has access to. And of course, I think Helen's touched on it. It then depends on the skill set and the ability of the underwriter they're talking to. And hence the referral to the same insurer through a different underwriter will have a different response. Now, in many ways, when that world changed, we are now getting a myriad of questions. Am I covered for this? What happens if? And this goes back to Helen, they're testing, they're asking, because there's an element of uncertainty that's crept in, not least helped by the global pandemic and the insurers sort of effectively coming into the headlights. But I think the solution now lies where I think brokers need to genuinely understand where insurers' true risk appetite is, because also that has changed. And I think once you understand where that risk appetite is, insurers should invest in that particular area, and then the customer queries can be channeled correctly, and therefore the referrals should be minimized. And then that requires the insurer to populate the underwriters with the adequate skill and the levels of authority we expect. And equally, the brokers have got to equally invest in their staff to make sure they're not asking the same bloody question time in, time out, when they should know the answer and share information. So I don't think we're in a world of unique questions. I think there's been a repetition of questions, and I think both insurers and software providers all need to work in tandem, because the answers are all there. We just need to share the answers before the questions are asked. But it's the inconsistency of the market, inconsistency of the wording, inconsistency of the broker that's asking the question, and the response they're getting from the skilled or otherwise insurer employee. And I think it's a cocktail for disaster if we don't start to share what is commonly meant. And I think we do a great job, but sometimes we're misunderstood and misinterpreted. And it's because we don't ask the right questions of the right individuals.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting. Yeah, very interesting areas. And I'm sure lots to definitely discuss. I know we're running out of time. So Dave, I just wanted to touch upon if you had any perspective in terms of referral delays and some of the solutions that you feel could be implemented in the years ahead to really reduce the time that brokers are waiting.
I think we've touched on most of the issues, Sav. I think the bit I would perhaps that we've perhaps not looked at is how we can better use data to see, data exists within broker management systems, with insurer extranets, how we can better use that data to perhaps inform decisions. And I guess that kind of leads back onto Ashwin's point slightly, in the sense that, that there will be common themes. And if we analyze the data in the right way, we'll actually be able to weed out the common themes and understand whether that's a pricing point, is that a risk appetite point, is that a training aspect that sits within the within the broker or the insurer's offering. So for me, really, it's pick up all of the points, but really looking at what data there is available to help inform kind of future decisions. And I think, as Wayne said, there's certainly we certainly see insurers like Allianz who are looking at their data and trying to really understand how they better improve their products, and really it's about efficiency, right? Because nobody wants to read the fact that the data referrals are sat with insurers for any period of time that's extended. So I think we've touched on the point pretty well.
Thank you for everyone for your perspective on that question. Just moving on to the third area. I know that we have some really interesting questions coming in, so thank you for putting them forward. I'll definitely select a number of them in about 5 minutes just to put towards the panelists. The final area I wanted to discuss was all about the kind of different routes of trading. What we found in our research was, we found that 83% of brokers, they do have an electronic trading strategy in place. But then when we probe them further and we ask brokers, which e-trading route do you predominantly use to apply this strategy? We found that 53% were using a combination of both trading routes, with 25% using insurer extranets, 21% using purely a broker management system. So 53% using a combination of both trading routes, is quite a very high percentage in this day and age. And when we probed further to ask brokers, what route of e-trading do you feel will become more dominant amongst in the next kind of 3 to 5 years? And 48% of brokers felt that both routes will remain dominant, and 39% felt broker management systems would become dominant, whereas only 12% felt insurer extranets would become the dominant. So just kind of exploring some of the reasons brokers may want to choose a particular route of trading. So my question to, if we begin with Dave. So Dave, with the vast majority of brokers believing that both broker management systems and extranets will remain central to business operations over the next 3 years, how can brokers overcome the intrinsic difficulties of running different digital approaches in parallel?
I think one of the reasons that brokers will run both extranets and their software house system in parallel will be much around either the perception that the price or the rates that are offered on the extranet is different to a software house or vice versa. I guess the other side of it sometimes can be, in particular, could be around ease of use. So if the particular software house that brokers are using doesn't make it easy to e-trade via their platform, then I guess that could be one of the points. I guess really the other side of it is that brokers know their market, and therefore the instinct sometimes is to is perhaps that for certain types of risk is to make a judgment around which insurer would have the best appetite, slightly back to the last question. So one of the things that certainly we've worked on, and lots of the other software houses and insurers are working collectively on, is how do we streamline the question sets so that we're reducing the noise, if you like, and making it easier to key information in once and get a response back from multiple insurers. Polaris has done some great work in that area, but I think there's still perhaps some work to do as products sophistication of them iterates. There's a bit of an overhead there for the industry that we need to find a better way to overcome. So certainly for me, it'll be around perception of what's available and what's available where, but also as an industry, as e-trade becomes more and more common and the premiums that we look to e-trade gets higher and higher, we really need to look and make sure that we're asking the most relevant questions to get the most relevant price. And once we do that, I think intrinsically people want to drive efficiency, back to one of the points we made earlier on.
Okay, very, very interesting. And Helen, just to put the question towards yourself, I know you work with a range of broker partners across the country who may have different digital approaches that are kind of running in parallel. What's your kind of perspective on a business using this approach, and how do you feel by having both having the different digital approaches running in parallel, how do you think that will raise challenges in the future for many brokers in the market?
If I'm honest, I think it probably comes back to the point Ashwin made earlier, which is about having a really clear understanding of appetite, because there is a reason those two kind of routes exist today. And whilst I do personally think we will see a shift, I don't think we'll ever see us going down a monoline, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I think ultimately, the efficiencies you can get out of using those broker management systems, particularly in what I would classify as the smaller, straightforward, your small contractors, your offices, absolutely can understand why that is highly attractive, and you can get that market comparison, quick responses, and products that are often fairly standard, etc. So it really delivers efficiencies. What I see in terms of where extranets still have a place, and I think this is why it's really important that brokers are clear on appetite, and that insurers work to make sure that they're very clear on appetite, is extranets are a place for innovation more at this stage, because you can test and learn, you can put something out to market without exposing yourself in a way that, or when you're on live on a broker management system, you could obviously have a much greater risk. So it's a really great test and learn approach, and something we have used in Allianz repeatedly and works really well for us. But also what I see in terms of usage, and I think why it still has a place, and it is around complexity. My view is that it's easier to handle the complex end of e-trade on extranets, and that's because insurers can be clearer over what their appetite is, what questions they need to know, and also they have greater control over that kind of user journey in that environment. And I think that's why there is still an attractiveness in that kind of environment. So for me, it's about how do brokers not waste effort? Everybody's time is precious. So how do they focus on understanding which are the best places to go to get the right response for the customer that they're looking at? And it's up for insurers to make sure that they're really clear about kind of those sweet spots and appetite, etc., so that we're supporting brokers in making those decisions.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And Wayne, I wanted to, before we move on to some of the questions that have come in from people who are watching today, wanted to get your kind of perspective from the broker management system perspective. Can brokers really have both strategies running in parallel? Like, there's a lot of brokers out there who are, using both broker management systems and insurer extranets for, several benefits on both sides. that are arguable. You can definitely argue both sides of the coin. What's your kind of perspective on the years ahead, and do you feel that difficulties will grow for those brokers?
I think at the moment it's evidenced by the feedback that we're getting from the reports and the various reports that there is still that mixed process at the moment. Some brokers absolutely do appreciate all the benefits and advantages that eTrading through a software house delivers in terms of that comparative quote and functionality. And as Helen says, that absolutely hits the mark for those more kind of packaged and streamlined products. When we move to the more complex ones, and I think that's where we're probably going to end up going, some of those more complex ones will be fully tradable and far more efficiently traded through a software house. But then I think there will always be a specialist lines section of the market that will probably still lend its way towards being traded through the extranet for the same reasons as Helen suggested. Not all insurers play on those same product lines, so you're going to have a smaller panel anyway. You're probably not going to have 6 or 7 insurers that focus on, you know, real complex speciality lines. So it might be something that 2 or 3 insurers play in. They work to a different question set. They've got their own product rules and things like that. So I think there'll be less of those products in the future as more become streamlined into the eTrade process through the software houses. But I think there will inevitably be, at some stage, those larger, complex or more specialist lines that will always need to be manually traded or potentially through an extranet too.
Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, no, I wanted to make sure that we get some of the questions in that are coming in. So if you have any questions, please write your questions down and I'll definitely try and address it. So I think a good question, and I know we touched upon it earlier, was all about kind of referrals. Ashwin, I'll put the question to you from someone who's watching today. The question that they had was, you know, are you suggesting that there should be a designated person for flagging referrals? Do you think that there should be a designated person?
I think, Simon, look, we have definitely de-skilled our profession and our industry. I think we're relying so much, and it's interesting listening to the debate today where we talk about product commoditization or the rest of it. Insurance by definition is not a simple product. You know, a travel insurance product is not simple. A shop, a salon, an office, a surgery, they're not simple products, because that formed the basis of the High Court and the Judicial Court case, because it's the simplicity of wording that insurers have tried to drive into the market, which has caused the angst on the COVID claims. So we've all made the assumption that we can streamline certain things, and I do accept we've got to take out additional cost, but I think we have de-skilled to such an extent, we've lost the art of underwriting. And I would definitely be looking to invest in some sort of think tank or within insurers where referrals can go in to the experienced underwriters who understand the market, understand the wording, and rather than rely on some of the junior staff to handle those queries, that's where the frustrations lie. So I think it's well within the scope of the larger insurers that are either tuned in today or Helen's business, where you can have a dedicated team where referrals are gone in. It doesn't have to be a phone call. You can just like live chat, put the queries in, and most underwriters should be able to respond to it very quickly. Listen, this is not rocket science. It's about understanding your product, understanding your appetite, and being able to answer those queries in a very frictionless way. Let's not create an industry of doubt when there doesn't need to be, because an insurance product is meant to cover certain things. We'll understand what you're selling, and the broker, I was smiling when Dave suggested that brokers know their markets. I don't think brokers actually do know their market well enough. And I think this is the year where people have really got to look at their business models and really understand where they are. And in many ways, going back to the last question, you know, 48%, well, it's like a roulette. It's like going to a casino. You know, I'll put a quid on red and a quid on black. I'm not going to lose, but then I've not won. So I'm trying to cover all odds. And I think now's the time to be very specific about your appetite, about brokers knowing which sectors they're investing in. And by and large, again, if you've got a dedicated team responding, fantastic. And last point, so I'm just conscious of time, where we've used the word data. Do brokers understand the data that they're sitting on is absolutely gold dust? You need to mine that data to best commercial advantage. And I think opportunities are there for the thinking broker that's looking at their data set.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. I'm very conscious on time. We've got some really good questions coming in. A number of attendees have put this question forward. So I wanted to just go around the panel, maybe get 30 seconds, 30, 40 seconds from each of you on this very question. How can brokers ensure they stay relevant post-pandemic? And Wayne, let's start with yourself. 30, 40 seconds. Let's see. What can they do?
I work with lots of brokers. I probably don't see as many as I used to. I wish I could, and I plan to do more of that. I think absolutely they're vital, aren't they? All brokers, all businesses that work with customers and kind of, again, just try and streamline the process and that experience and that knowledge of insurance just to help their customers. And I think what we've all got to try and do, we've touched on so many of these areas today. I think all the items that we need in the toolkit are available. I think we just need to make sure that we're all, including the brokers, including the insurers, including the software houses, we're all using them and utilizing them to their best advantage. Helen used an example, and Ashwin did as well, that brokers are sometimes just asking questions that probably are, you know, that could be thought through or just referred to somebody individually to kind of stop that in the first place. And then software houses need a way of channeling those so that actually they're not impacting on anybody else's time loads too. I think we just need to the thing that's come out of this whole conversation for me is all the tools are in the bag. We've just got to use them properly and use them together.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Helen, could I ask you just very briefly as you can? I know there's must be so much information that you want to share, but how can brokers ensure they stay relevant?
I think post-pandemic brokers are more relevant than ever. I think we've just proven, as Ashwin was saying, how complicated insurance can be and the value of advice. For me, it's about how brokers bring that to life for their customers going forward. And I think, as we talked about, sitting on that data, using that data to pinpoint interaction with customers, using it to bring to life some of the risks and issues that they're sat on and show that we know their businesses as an industry is a really critical one. And I think we'll continue to therefore support and show the value of broking when buying insurances going forward. There, tried to keep it brief for you.
Thank you so much for keeping it as brief. I'm sure there's a lot more that you want to share. Yeah. Dave, I will leave it the final kind of response to you. I know we've got 1 minute, as much as you can share. How can brokers ensure they stay relevant post-pandemic?
I think Helen touched on it, right? It's about advice and the level of service they give to their clients, and it's about the type of advice and service they give at the most appropriate point in time. So I know there's lots of questions in the chat around when self-service is relevant. It will be relevant at different points in the buying cycle for different types of brokers, and therefore, you know, the key for me is understanding your business and understanding how you best service the clients you've got and the particular need they've got. You know, brokers will get questions on a day-to-day basis, some of which are really important and do warrant a phone call, some of which are almost throwaway questions, so they might be best dealt with via self-service. So for me, it's about ensuring that you know, brokers understand their clients, understand their business, and use the best method of communication to deliver the service that you know, undoubtedly brokers offer in the current market.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Ashwin, for joining us today. Really interesting insights shared, and I'm sure we can do this again later in the year where circumstances will certainly be more kind of developed and more issues in the market that need addressing. Some really interesting topics were covered here today. Sorry for anyone who put their questions forward, and what we can possibly do is we'll take your questions, we'll put them towards the panelists and provide the answers in an article form in the coming weeks, so you can see some of their kind of responses in all the areas. So thank you everyone for joining today, and if you're a broker, please take part in our eTrading survey, which is currently live. Had a fantastic response last year. Over 1,000 brokers took part, so please take part again this year, and thank you for joining us today and listening for this very interesting topic. Thank you very much.